The cold marble floor pressed against her cheek, and when her eyes fluttered open, she saw nothing familiar at all. She pushed herself upright, her head spinning with a dizziness that made the ornate room tilt around her. Velvet curtains the color of dried blood hung from towering windows, blocking out whatever lay beyond. The furniture was antique, the kind she'd only seen in museums, dark wood, carved with intricate patterns, upholstered in rich fabrics that whispered of old money and older secrets. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceiling frescoes depicting scenes she couldn't quite make out in the dim light. Everything smelled of aged wood, expensive perfume, and something else. Something metallic and sharp that made her stomach turn. She tried to remember her name first. That seemed important. Nothing came. She tried to remember where she'd been before this moment, what she'd been doing, who she'd been with. Still nothing. Panic rose in her chest like a physical thing, clawing at her throat. She stood on shaking legs, her hands instinctively patting down her body. She wore a dress silk, she thought, though she couldn't remember learning about fabrics. It was emerald green and felt expensive against her skin. No pockets, no phone, no identification. She had no idea who she was. The double doors across the room opened without warning, and a figure stepped through that made her forget about her missing memories entirely. He was tall, impossibly so, with skin so pale it seemed to glow in the candlelight. White hair fell past his shoulders in waves that caught the light like spun silver. His features were sharp and aristocratic, his jaw carved from marble, his lips full and set in a serious line, but it was his eyes that stopped her heart red as fresh blood, burning with an intensity that pinned her in place. He wore all black, perfectly tailored, looking like he'd stepped out of a gothic painting. Everything about him screamed danger and power and something ancient that her mind couldn't quite grasp. "You're awake," he said, his voice like silk over steel. An accent she couldn't place colored his words. "Good. I was beginning to worry." She took a step back, her survival instincts screaming even if her memories were silent. "Who are you? Where am I? What's happening?" He moved further into the room with a grace that wasn't quite human. Each step was perfectly measured, predatory. "My name is Xavros Blackthorne. You are in my manor, which lies beneath the city you once knew. As for what's happening..." His red eyes studied her with unsettling focus. "That is more complicated. I need to leave." The words burst from her before she could think them through. "I need to go home. I need to. I can't remember anything. I can't remember my name or where I live or..." "You cannot leave," Xavros said simply, cutting through her rising hysteria with the firmness of absolute authority. "It is not safe for you out there. Not anymore. You can't keep me here." Her voice rose, echoing off the high ceilings. "You can't just kidnap someone, and I did not kidnap you." He moved closer, and she noticed he cast no shadow in the candlelight. "My men found you dying in an alley 3 nights ago. You had been attacked, drained nearly to death. If I had not intervened, you would be dead now." The words didn't make sense. "Drained? What does that mean? What are you talking about?" Xavros tilted his head, studying her with those unsettling red eyes. "You truly remember nothing? Not the attack? Not what you saw?" "I don't remember anything." The admission felt like tearing something vital from her chest. "I woke up on your floor with no idea who I am or how I got here. The last thing I need is some cryptic stranger telling me I can't leave when I don't even know what I'm leaving from." Something that might have been sympathy flickered across his perfect features. "Your name is Meredith Thorne, according to the identification we found in your belongings. You are 24 years old. You lived alone in the city above us. Beyond that," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Beyond that, I know very little. But I know what attacked you, and I know that you cannot return to your old life until we determine why they targeted you specifically." "They?" Meredith wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the room. "Who attacked me?" Xavros's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. "Vampires." The word hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Meredith wanted to laugh, to tell him he was insane, to demand the real explanation, but something in her core believed him instantly. Something in the way he moved, in the red of his eyes, in the unnatural perfection of his features screamed truth. "You're telling me vampires are real," she said slowly, testing the words on her tongue. "Yes." "And they attacked me." "Yes. And you." She looked at him properly now, seeing the details she'd been too panicked to notice before. The way his chest didn't rise with breath, the unnatural stillness when he wasn't moving, the fangs that were just barely visible when he spoke. "You're one of them." "I am." He said it with pride, his chin lifting slightly. "I am Xavros Blackthorne, king of the Nightborn Court, ruler of the vampire territories that span beneath every major city in the world. And you, Meredith Thorne, are under my protection whether you want it or not. I want to leave." She said it firmly, even as her legs trembled. "Thank you for saving me, but I need to go. I need to figure out who I am and what happened to me." "You will do that here." His tone left no room for argument. The vampires who attacked you were not random feeders. They were assassins from a rival court, and they left you alive deliberately. That means they want something from you, or they want to use you to get to something else. Either way, you are in danger. Then call the police. The human police cannot help you with this. Xavros moved to one of the tall windows and pulled back the curtain slightly. Beyond lay not the city street Meredith expected, but a vast cavern lit by thousands of lights. Buildings rose from the cavern floor, a gothic cityscape of spires and arches carved from the stone itself. This is the Nightborn realm, hidden beneath the human world. Down here, vampire law reigns, and by vampire law, you are mine to protect. "I'm not yours," Meredith said, but her voice wavered as she stared at the impossible city beyond the window. "I'm not anyone's." Xavros turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "You are alive because I claimed you before my court. I declared you under my personal protection, which means no vampire in this realm or above can touch you without facing my wrath, but it also means you cannot leave until the threat is neutralized. Do you understand?" "No!" The word burst out of her, with all the frustration and fear churning in her chest. "None of this makes sense. Yesterday, or whenever it was, I was a normal person living a normal life. Now you're telling me vampires are real and I'm trapped underground in some secret city because someone wants to kill me for reasons no one knows. How am I supposed to just accept that?" "I do not need you to accept it." His voice softened slightly, though his expression remained firm. "I need you to survive it, and the only way to do that is to stay here, where I can keep you safe." Meredith felt tears burning behind her eyes. Everything was too much, too fast, too strange. She wanted to curl up and wake up from this nightmare. She wanted her memories back. She wanted to feel like herself, whoever that was. "I'm scared," she whispered, the admission costing her everything. Xavros's expression shifted then, something almost gentle, crossing his features. He moved toward her slowly, giving her time to back away if she wanted. When she didn't, he reached out and touched her shoulder with surprising care. His hand was cold but steady. "Fear is wisdom in the face of danger," he said quietly. "But you do not need to face this alone. I will protect you, Meredith Thorne. That is my vow as king and as the one who brought you into this world of shadows. No harm will come to you while you remain under my roof." She looked up at him, at this impossibly beautiful creature who claimed to be a vampire king, and found herself believing him. Maybe it was the certainty in his voice. Maybe it was the strange pull she felt toward him despite everything. Or maybe it was simply that she had no other choice. "How long?" she asked. "How long do I have to stay? Until we find who sent those assassins and why. Until we can guarantee your safety in the world above." His hand dropped from her shoulder, and she felt strangely bereft at its loss. It could be days. It could be weeks. "And I'm just supposed to stay in this room the whole time?" "You have freedom of the manor," Xavros said. "My home is extensive. I will have servants bring you anything you require. But you cannot leave the grounds, and you must not go anywhere without an escort. The vampire world is dangerous for humans, even under protection." Meredith wanted to argue more, to demand her freedom, to insist on some semblance of control over her life, but exhaustion was creeping through her bones, and the enormity of everything was crushing her from all sides. She needed time to process, to think, to remember. "Fine," she said, hating how defeated she sounded. "I'll stay. For now. Thank you." Xavros inclined his head in a gesture that felt courtly and old-fashioned. "I will have food and fresh clothing brought to you. Rest. Recover. Tomorrow we will begin working to restore your memories." He turned to leave, but Meredith's voice stopped him at the door. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care? Why go through all this trouble for some random human?" Xavros looked back at her, and something in his red eyes made her heart skip. "Because when I found you dying in that alley, covered in blood and barely breathing, something inside me refused to let you go. I have lived for over 800 years, Meredith Thorne, and I have never felt that particular pull before. So whether fate, coincidence, or something else brought you into my path, I will not stand by and watch you die. Not when I have the power to prevent it." Then he was gone, the doors closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like a prison lock in the silence. Meredith stood alone in the lavish room and finally let herself cry. The next morning, or what she assumed was morning, since there were no windows to the surface down here, Meredith woke in a bed she didn't remember getting into. Someone had dressed her in silk pajamas and left a tray of food on the bedside table, fresh fruit, pastries, coffee that smelled like heaven. Her stomach growled, reminding her she couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. As she ate, She studied the room more carefully. Every detail spoke of wealth beyond measure. The bed frame was carved dark wood with posts that reached toward the frescoed ceiling. The linens were soft as clouds. Paintings hung on the walls, originals if she was any judge, depicting landscapes and figures in classical styles. A vanity with an ornate mirror sat against one wall, and through an open doorway she could see a bathroom with a claw foot tub that looked like it could fit 3 people. It was a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. After eating, she showered and found a wardrobe full of clothes in exactly her size. Dresses, pants, blouses, all in rich fabrics and dark colors. Everything fit perfectly, which should have been comforting but instead felt invasive. How did Xavros know her measurements? How long had she been unconscious? She dressed in black pants and a deep red blouse, braided her dark hair to keep it off her face, and steeled herself to explore. The hallway outside her room was just as opulent as her chamber. Sconces lit with what looked like actual candles lined the walls, though the flames never flickered or smoked. The floor was polished stone, and more paintings adorned every available space. She walked slowly, trailing her fingers along the wall, trying to get her bearings in this strange underground world. My lady should not wander alone. Meredith spun to find a young woman standing behind her, or at least young-looking. Her skin was pale as milk, her hair white blonde and cropped short. Red eyes studied Meredith with open curiosity. She wore modern clothes, jeans, and a simple black shirt, which somehow made her ethereal beauty even more striking. "I'm not your lady," Meredith said automatically, "and Xavros said I could explore the manor, under escort," the woman reminded her, a small smile playing at her lips, "which is why I am here. My name is Seraphina. I am one of His Majesty's personal guard, and he has assigned me to ensure your safety while you reside with us. You mean to make sure I don't escape?" Seraphina's smile widened, showing the points of her fangs. That too, but mostly the safety part. "You would be surprised how many dangers lurk even in a place as secure as this. Come. If you wish to explore, I will show you the parts worth seeing." Meredith wanted to refuse on principle, but curiosity won out. She followed Seraphina through winding corridors that seemed to go on forever. The manor was massive, more palace than house, carved into the cavern stone itself. Some rooms were clearly living quarters, others were galleries filled with art and artifacts. One chamber held weapons from every era imaginable, swords and axes and guns arranged in careful displays. "His Majesty is a collector," Seraphina explained, watching Meredith examine a particularly ornate sword. 800 years provides ample time to acquire interesting things. 800 years. Meredith tested the words, trying to comprehend that kind of lifespan. "How old are you?" 234. Seraphina said it as casually as someone might say 24. "I am quite young by vampire standards. His Majesty is one of the oldest of our kind still actively ruling. Most of the truly ancient ones retreat from public life after their first millennium." "Why doesn't he?" Seraphina's expression grew thoughtful. "Because he believes in protecting our people, in maintaining order, in upholding the old codes that keep our kind from descending into chaos. He is a good king, even if his methods can be," she paused, searching for the word, "intense. That's one way to put it." Meredith moved away from the weapons, uncomfortable with how easily she could imagine them being used. "He won't even let me try to leave. Would you truly want to?" Seraphina asked. "Knowing that assassins from the Crimson Court attacked you specifically? Knowing that they left you alive for some purpose we have yet to determine. You are human, Meredith Thorne. You would not last a day out there if they decided to finish what they started." The words were harsh, but not unkind. Meredith understood the guard was simply being practical. Still, it chafed to have her choices taken away. "I just want to understand," she said softly. "I want my memories back. I want to know who I am and why any of this is happening to me." "His Majesty has summoned a memory specialist," Seraphina offered. "She arrives tonight from the Eastern Territories. If anyone can help restore what you have lost, it is her." A spark of hope flared in Meredith's chest. "Really? Someone can actually help me remember?" "Perhaps. Memory loss in humans who survive vampire attacks is not uncommon. The trauma, the blood loss, the venom, it can all affect the mind. Sometimes the memories return naturally. Sometimes they require encouragement." Seraphina gestured down another corridor. "Come, there is one more place I think you should see." They walked through a set of double doors into a library that stole Meredith's breath. The room was circular and rose 3 stories high, every wall lined with books from floor to ceiling. Ladders on rails provided access to the higher shelves, and comfortable seating areas with plush chairs and good lighting dotted the space. Somehow, despite being underground, the room felt airy and bright. "His Majesty's personal collection. Seraphina said. "Over 500,000 volumes in dozens of languages, collected across centuries. He said you are welcome to read anything you like." Meredith moved into the library like someone entering a church. She'd always loved books, or at least she thought she had. It felt like something she would have loved, even if she couldn't remember specific instances. Her fingers traced the spines reverently, reading titles in English, French, Latin, languages she didn't recognize. Why is he being so kind to me? The question escaped before she could stop it. I'm just some human who got caught up in vampire politics. Why does he care? Seraphina studied her for a long moment, red eyes thoughtful. I have served His Majesty for 200 years. In all that time, I have never seen him react to anyone the way he reacted to you. When he brought you back from the surface, covered in blood and barely alive, he would not let anyone else touch you. He stayed by your bedside for 3 days straight, feeding you his own blood to heal you, watching over you like a dragon guards its hoard. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. Whatever his reasons, they are not casual. You matter to him, Meredith Thorne. I suggest you think carefully about what that means. Before Meredith could respond, Seraphina's head snapped toward the door. Her entire body went tense, predatory instincts clearly engaged. What is it? Meredith asked, alarm rising. Stay here, Seraphina commanded. Then she was gone, moving with inhuman speed that left only a blur in her wake. Meredith stood frozen in the library, her heart pounding. She could hear sounds now, distant but growing closer, shouting, the crash of something breaking, running footsteps. The library doors burst open, and Xavros strode in, looking like an avenging angel in all black. His white hair was pulled back, his red eyes blazing with fury that made Meredith take an involuntary step backward. Your Majesty, she said. Unsure why she used the title but unable to help herself, his expression softened marginally when he saw her. You are safe. Good. There has been a breach. Assassins managed to infiltrate the manor. His jaw clenched. They are seeking you. Terror spiked through her. How? You said I was protected here, and you are. He crossed to her in 3 long strides, his cold hand catching her arm. But the Crimson Court grows bold. They have declared war on my territory by sending killers into my own home. His fingers tightened slightly. Not enough to hurt, but enough to feel possessive. I will not let them have you. Maybe you should just give me to them. Meredith said, hating how her voice shook. Maybe if I'm not here, this war or whatever won't happen. Xavros's eyes flashed dangerously. You would offer yourself up to those who tried to kill you? You would walk willingly into the hands of monsters? You're all monsters! The words burst out before she could stop them. Vampires, assassins, kings, you're all the same. I'm just a human caught in the middle of something I don't understand. Then let me make you understand. He pulled her closer, and she could feel the cold radiating from his body. The Crimson Court is led by an ancient vampire named Constantine, who has wanted my territories for centuries. He is cruel and sadistic, and sees humans as nothing but food and toys. If he has targeted you, it is because he believes taking you will hurt me or give him leverage. And if I let him have you, he will torture you for information, drain you slowly for sport, and discard what remains when he grows bored. Is that what you want? Meredith felt tears burning hot tracks down her face. I want to go home. I want my life back. Something in Xavros's expression cracked, showing vulnerability beneath the kingly authority. I know, and I swear to you, I will find a way to give you that. But first, you must survive, and to survive you must trust me. A massive crash echoed from somewhere in the manor, followed by an inhuman shriek that made Meredith's blood run cold. Xavros's head snapped toward the sound. They are closer than I thought. He looked back at Meredith with decision hardening his features. There is a safe room, warded with ancient magic. I am taking you there now. What about you? I am going to remind the Crimson Court why they should fear the Nightborn King. He swept her up into his arms before she could protest, and then they were moving with impossible speed. The manor blurred around them, corridors passing in seconds. Meredith clung to him, her face pressed against his chest, feeling the unsettling stillness where a heartbeat should have been. They descended deeper into the manor, downstairs carved from bedrock, until they reached a heavy door covered in symbols that glowed with soft silver light. Xavros spoke words in a language Meredith didn't understand, and the door swung open to reveal a small room lined with more glowing symbols. He set her down gently inside. The wards will hold against anyone who wishes you harm. Stay here until I return for you. And if you don't return? The question escaped before she could stop it, and she realized with surprise that the thought terrified her. Xavros reached out and cupped her face with one cold hand, his red eyes holding hers with intensity that made her forget to breathe. I have survived 800 years of vampire politics, wars, and assassination attempts. A few Crimson Court assassins will not be the thing that ends me, especially not when I have something worth living for. The implication in his words, in his touch, in his gaze, made heat flood through her despite everything. Before she could respond, he stepped back and the door swung shut, sealing her inside with a sound of absolute finality. Meredith sank to the floor, wrapped her arms around her knees, and waited. Time lost meaning in the warded room. There was no sound from outside, no way to tell what was happening in the manor above. The glowing symbols provided light, but no comfort. Meredith's mind raced with terrible possibilities. What if Xavros was hurt? What if the assassins broke through? What if she was trapped here forever? Why did she care so much what happened to a vampire king she'd known for barely a day? But she did care. Despite her fear and confusion, despite being held against her will, despite everything logical and sensible, she cared whether Xavros lived or died. The thought of those red eyes closing forever made something in her chest ache with surprising fierceness. She'd been in the safe room for what felt like hours when the door finally opened. Xavros stood on the threshold, and Meredith scrambled to her feet. His clothes were torn and splattered with dark blood, his white hair disheveled, but his red eyes burned bright and alive. "It is done," he said simply. "Are you hurt?" He looked surprised by the question. "I am uninjured. The same cannot be said for those who invaded my home." His expression darkened. "I captured one alive. He is being questioned now. Will he tell you why they're after me?" "He will, one way or another." Xavros extended his hand toward her. "Come, the memory specialist has arrived. It is time we found some answers." Meredith took his hand without hesitation, letting him pull her from the safe room. His skin was cold as always, but his grip was steady and reassuring. She didn't let go as they climbed back through the manor, and he didn't pull away. The interrogation room was in a part of the manor Seraphina hadn't shown her deeper, darker, more obviously a dungeon. The memory specialist waited in a parlor nearby, well away from whatever was happening to the captured assassin. She was ancient, that much was immediately obvious. Her pale skin seemed almost translucent, and her white hair fell to her knees in a straight curtain. But her eyes were kind, the red softened to almost pink with age. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing deeply to Xavros. "You honor me by requesting my services. The honor is mine, Lady Ravenna." Xavros guided Meredith forward. "This is Meredith Thorne. She lost her memories during a vampire attack. Can you help her?" Ravenna's ancient eyes studied Meredith with unsettling focus. "Perhaps. Memory magic is delicate, especially with humans. Their minds are more fragile than ours. But I will try." She gestured to a chair. "Sit, child. Let me see what blocks your past." Meredith glanced at Xavros, who nodded encouragingly. She sat, her hands clenched in her lap as Ravenna moved behind her. "Relax," the old vampire murmured. "This will not hurt. I am simply going to look inside your mind, find the walls your trauma has built, and see if they can be safely taken down." Cool fingers pressed against Meredith's temples. She felt a strange sensation, like cobwebs brushing across her thoughts. Images flickered at the edges of her consciousness, a coffee shop, laughter, someone's face she couldn't quite make out, then pain. It slammed into her skull like a spike driven through bone. She cried out, and immediately Ravenna's hands jerked away. "Fascinating," the old vampire breathed. "What is it?" Xavros demanded, moving to Meredith's side. "What did you see?" "A spell." Ravenna's eyes were wide. Ancient magic, woven directly into her memories. Someone deliberately erased them, not the trauma of the attack. The revelation hit the room like a thunderclap. Meredith pressed her hands to her head, the phantom pain still throbbing. "Someone did this to me on purpose? Why?" "That I cannot say," Ravenna admitted. "But the spell was cast by a vampire of considerable power. Breaking it will be difficult and dangerous. If done wrong, it could damage her mind permanently." "Then do it right," Xavros said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command. "It will take time. Days, perhaps. And she must be willing to face whatever was hidden from her. Sometimes memories are blocked for good reason." Ravenna looked at Meredith seriously. "Are you prepared for that possibility, child?" Meredith thought about it, about living without knowing who she truly was, about the gaping void where her identity should be. "I need to know. Whatever the cost, I need to know." Ravenna nodded slowly. "Very well. We will begin tomorrow, after I have prepared properly. For now, rest. The work ahead will not be easy on your mind or body." After the old vampire left, Xavros escorted Meredith back to her room in silence. At her door, she caught his sleeve before he could leave. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for protecting me today, for bringing in Ravenna, for everything." His red eyes softened. "You do not need to thank me for keeping you safe. It is what I vowed to do." "Why?" The question she'd asked before, but needed to ask again. "Why me, specifically? You must have encountered hundreds of humans in your long life." "What makes me different?" Xavros was quiet for a long moment, seeming to struggle with something internal. Finally, he said, "When I saw you in that alley, bleeding and dying, something ancient inside me recognized something in you. We vampires, we do not feel things the way humans do. Our emotions are colder, more distant, dulled by centuries of existence. But when I looked at you, I felt alive. Truly alive, for the first time in decades." He lifted his hand as if to touch her face, then dropped it. "I do not understand it myself, but I know that I will not let anyone take you from this world. Not while I draw breath or the semblance of it." The confession left Meredith breathless. She didn't know what to say, how to respond to such raw honesty from a creature who was supposed to be a monster. So instead, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, feeling the cold marble of his skin against her lips. When she pulled back, Xavros looked stunned, his red eyes wide with something she couldn't name. "Good night, Your Majesty," she whispered, then slipped into her room and closed the door. She leaned against it, her heart pounding, wondering what she'd just done and why it felt so impossibly right. The next 3 days passed in a blur of memory work and growing tension. Each morning, Ravenna would come to Meredith's room and spend hours carefully dismantling the spell that blocked her past. It was exhausting work. Meredith would end each session with a splitting headache and fragments of memories that didn't quite connect. She saw herself working in a bookstore, shelving volumes and helping customers. She saw an apartment, small but cozy, filled with plants and books. She saw friends, their faces still blurry, laughing over coffee. Normal life, human life, the kind she'd lost, but there were other fragments too. Darker ones. A man following her home from work. A sense of being watched. Fear building over weeks. And then the alley, the attack, pale figures with red eyes and 2 sharp teeth, draining her life away while she screamed. After each session, Xavros would come to check on her. Sometimes he'd bring food or books. Sometimes he'd simply sit with her in companionable silence. Slowly, carefully, they were building something between them. Trust, maybe. Or something deeper that neither wanted to name. On the 3rd evening, Meredith ventured to ask him questions about his world. They sat in the library, her curled in one of the plush chairs, him standing by the fireplace looking like a gothic painting. "What's it like?" she asked. "Living for so long?" Xavros considered the question carefully. "Lonely," he admitted. "You watch everyone you care about age and die. You see empires rise and fall. After the first few centuries, most things lose their capacity to surprise or move you. The world becomes muted. Is that why you rule? To feel something? Perhaps. Or perhaps because someone must maintain order, and I am old enough and strong enough to do it effectively." He turned to look at her. "The vampire world is brutal, Meredith. Without structure, without laws and consequences, we would tear each other apart and expose our existence to the human world. That would be catastrophic for both our kinds." "Tell me about the Crimson Court," she said. "About this Constantine who wants me." Xavros's expression darkened. "Constantine is what happens when a vampire stops seeing value in anything but power and pleasure. He is over 1,000 years old, and he rules his territories through fear and violence. His court is known for its cruelty, its games, its complete disregard for any life but his own." His hands clenched. "He has wanted my territories for centuries, but the old laws prevent direct conflict between established courts. So he plays games, sends assassins, tries to find leverage, and I'm leverage now. He believes you are. Whether that is true depends on what we discover about your lost memories." Meredith hugged her knees to her chest. "What if I was working with them? What if I'm not actually a victim?" "Then you are a remarkably good actress," Xavros said, something almost like amusement in his voice. "No, everything about you speaks of innocence and confusion. You were targeted, not recruited. The question is why." That night, Meredith dreamed of blood and shadows, of red eyes in the darkness, of pain that went beyond physical. She woke gasping, tears streaming down her face, and found Xavros sitting in a chair beside her bed. "How long have you been there?" she asked, wiping at her eyes. "You were having nightmares. I heard you crying out." He didn't apologize for the invasion of privacy. "This is common after what you have experienced. It felt so real, like I was back in that alley, dying. You are safe here." He reached out and took her hand, his cold fingers wrapping around her warm ones. "I will not let anything hurt you, Meredith. Not assassins, not memories, not even your own mind." She held onto his hand like a lifeline. "Stay? Just until I fall back asleep?" He could have said no. Should have, probably. Maintained the proper distance between king and protected human. But instead he nodded, settled more comfortably in the chair, and kept holding her hand while she drifted back into hopefully dreamless sleep. The breakthrough came on the 4th day. Ravenna had been working for hours. her ancient magic carefully peeling back layers of the spell, when suddenly Meredith gasped, and her eyes flew open, blazing with awareness. "I remember," she breathed. Xavros, who had been pacing nearby, was at her side instantly. "What do you remember?" "Everything." "My life, the attack, what happened before." She grabbed his arm. "Xavros, I wasn't random. They targeted me specifically because of my job." "Your job?" He exchanged a glance with Ravenna. "You worked in a bookstore." "Yes, but not just any bookstore." It was a front for the Council of Preservation. "I'm an archivist. I protect and catalog ancient texts, including vampire histories and spell books." The words tumbled out faster as more memories clicked into place. 3 weeks ago, I found something in the inventory. A book that wasn't supposed to exist, the Chronicle of First Blood. It's supposed to be a myth, a vampire fairy tale, but I found the actual book. Xavros went very still. "That is impossible." "The Chronicle was destroyed centuries ago." "Apparently not. And I made the mistake of mentioning my discovery to someone I thought was a friend. But she must have been working for Constantine." Meredith's hands were shaking now. "The Chronicle contains the true names of the oldest vampires, the rituals of their making, the source of their power. Whoever possesses it could control or destroy even the most ancient of your kind." The implications crashed over the room like a wave. Ravenna swore softly in a language Meredith didn't recognize. Xavros's expression turned to stone. "Where is the Chronicle now?" he asked with forced calm. "Hidden. I knew something was wrong after my colleagues started asking strange questions. So I hid the book before they could take it." She pressed her hands to her temples. "I can see where I put it. A place in the human city, somewhere they wouldn't think to look. Then Constantine attacked you to learn its location," Xavros said grimly. "And when you wouldn't tell him or couldn't, he had his people wipe your memories to prevent anyone else from finding it." "But why leave me alive at all?" Meredith asked. "Why not just kill me? Because death is permanent, and dead minds cannot be read or manipulated," Ravenna answered. "He kept you alive so he could try again, perhaps with more sophisticated methods, or to use you as bait to draw out whoever might protect the Council's archives." "We need to retrieve the Chronicle before Constantine finds it," Xavros said. "Meredith, will you tell me where it is hidden?" She looked at him, at this vampire king who had protected her and stayed by her bedside and held her hand through nightmares. Everything logical said she shouldn't trust him, that all vampires were dangerous, that she should keep the Chronicle's location secret, but her heart knew differently. "I'll do better than tell you," she said. "I'll take you there. The hiding spot is magically locked to my touch. Only I can retrieve it." "Absolutely not." Xavros's refusal was immediate and absolute. "It is too dangerous. Constantine's people will be watching for any sign of you in the human world. The moment you surface, they will know." "Then we'll have to be careful." Meredith stood, facing him with determination. "Xavros, I'm the only one who can get that book. And if it's as powerful as I remember, we can't risk it falling into Constantine's hands. You said yourself he's cruel and sadistic. Can you imagine what he'd do with the power to control ancient vampires? Can you imagine what he will do to you if he captures you?" Xavros countered, his red eyes blazing. "He will torture you for the location, drain you slowly, make you beg for death before he finally grants it. I will not risk that." "It's not your choice." The words burst out louder than she intended. "I'm not your prisoner or your property. I'm a person. And this is my decision. I lived my whole life protecting these texts, keeping vampire secrets safe. I'm not going to stop now just because I finally met the creatures I've been protecting." They stood toe to toe, her human warmth against his vampire cold, her mortal stubbornness against his immortal authority. Something crackled in the air between them, tension that was equal parts anger, and something far more complicated. "Why?" Xavros asked, his voice dropping to something raw and painful. "Why would you risk yourself like this, when you could simply tell me the location and stay safe here?" "Because I trust you to do the right thing with that book," Meredith said simply. "And because I care what happens to you. If Constantine gets that Chronicle, you'll be in danger. All the good vampires, all the ones who try to maintain peace and order, you'll all be at risk. I can't let that happen." Something in his expression cracked. "You care what happens to me," he repeated, as if testing the words. "Yes." She stepped closer, close enough to feel the cold radiating from him. "I know I shouldn't. I know you're a vampire king and I'm just a human archivist and this whole situation is insane. But yes, Xavros Blackthorne, I care about you. So I'm going to help you get that Chronicle, whether you like it or not." For a moment, she thought he might argue further. Then, surprising her completely, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. His lips were cold but gentle, moving against hers with restrained passion that spoke of centuries of control and longing held carefully in check. Meredith melted into him, her hands coming up to tangle in his white hair, kissing him back with all the fear and confusion and desire that had been building between them since the moment she woke in his manor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, or at least she was breathing hard while he simply held her with his chest perfectly still, Xavros pressed his forehead to hers. "You are going to be the death of me," he murmured. "After 800 years of survival, I am going to perish because I cannot say no to a stubborn human woman." "Good thing you're already technically dead," she whispered back, and felt his chest move with silent laughter. Behind them, Ravenna cleared her throat delicately. "Shall I leave you two alone? Or are we planning a retrieval mission?" Xavros straightened, his king's mask sliding back into place, though his hand stayed on Meredith's waist. "We plan, but we do it right. Meredith, you will not set one foot into the human city without a full guard escort and every protection I can arrange. Agreed?" "Agreed." She smiled up at him. "See, we can compromise." "This is not compromise. This is me attempting to protect you while you throw yourself into danger." But his fingers tightened on her waist, possessive and warm despite his cold skin. "Very well. We retrieve the chronicle tomorrow at dusk, when I can travel on the surface. I will bring my best warriors. Seraphina will stay by your side every moment, and if anything goes wrong, if there is even a hint of Constantine's people, you retreat immediately. Understood?" "Understood." He kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "You are either the bravest woman I have ever met or the most foolish. I have not decided which. Can't I be both? With you, I suspect you are." He stepped back reluctantly. "Rest now. Tomorrow will be dangerous, and I need you sharp." After he left, Ravenna approached Meredith with knowing eyes. "You are falling in love with him." It wasn't a question. Meredith considered denying it, then decided there was no point. Is that foolish? Perhaps. Vampires and humans rarely end well. The lifespan difference alone. Ravenna trailed off. "But I have lived over 1,000 years, and I have never seen Xavros look at anyone the way he looks at you. Whatever this is between you, it is real. Whether it is wise is another matter entirely." "My whole life right now is unwise," Meredith pointed out. "Might as well add falling for a vampire king to the list." Ravenna's laugh was dry as autumn leaves. "You have spirit, child. Hold on to that. You will need it for what comes next." The next evening, as the sun set on the surface far above them, Meredith dressed in dark clothing, suitable for moving quickly through the city. Xavros had provided her with what looked like an ornate necklace, but was actually a protection charm, warded against vampire compulsion and tracking spells. Seraphina helped her braid her hair back tightly and gave her a knife to tuck into her boot. "Hopefully you will not need it," the vampire guard said, "but it is better to have a weapon and not use it than need one and have nothing." They gathered in a large chamber near the surface exit Xavros, Seraphina, and 4 other vampire warriors whose names Meredith struggled to remember in her nervousness. They all looked deadly, pale and beautiful, and utterly inhuman despite their modern clothing. Xavros pulled her aside before they departed. In the torchlight, his white hair gleamed like moonlight and his red eyes burned with intensity. "Stay close to me," he said, his hands framing her face. "No matter what happens, stay within reach. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you hide. Promise me. I promise." She covered his hands with hers. "But you have to promise to come back too. No heroic sacrifices, no dramatic last stands. We both survive this, or neither of us does. That is not how protecting someone works," he said. But she could hear the reluctant agreement in his voice. "It is now." She pulled him down and kissed him hard, trying to pour everything she felt into the contact. When they broke apart, his eyes were blazing with something beyond simple hunger. "Let's go get that book." The journey to the surface was surreal. They took a series of tunnels that led upward through the bedrock, eventually emerging in what looked like an abandoned subway station. A glamour hid the entrance from human eyes, and they slipped out into the evening city without drawing attention. Meredith took a deep breath of surface air, tasting car exhaust and food vendors and city life. After days underground, it felt both familiar and strange. The city moved around them, humans going about their evening completely unaware of the vampires moving through their midst. "Where?" Xavros asked quietly, his hand firm on her back. "The university library. 4th floor, rare books section." She started walking, trying to look casual despite her racing heart. "I volunteer there sometimes. I hid the chronicle in a false bottom I installed in one of the archive boxes." They moved through the city in a protective formation, the vampire guards fanning out to watch for threats. To any observer, they probably looked like a group of unusually attractive people out for an evening walk. But Meredith could feel the tension radiating from all of them, the predatory awareness of hunters expecting an attack. The university grounds were quiet this time of evening, most students either in their dorms or out at bars. The library loomed ahead, its Gothic architecture fitting given their company. They slipped inside, and Meredith led them past the circulation desk with a wave to the bored student worker, who didn't even look up from their phone, up the stairs to the 4th floor, down the narrow aisles between shelves packed with ancient texts. To the back corner where the archive boxes were stored in climate-controlled cases, Meredith's hands shook as she opened the correct case and pulled out a box labeled Medieval Medical Texts 15th Century. She removed the false bottom she'd constructed, and there it was, a book bound in leather so old it was nearly black, with symbols etched into the cover that seemed to writhe in the dim light. The Chronicle of First Blood, Xavros breathed, reverential and horrified at once. Meredith reached for it, but before her fingers could touch the leather, Seraphina shouted a warning. They came through the windows in a crash of breaking glass 5 vampires in dark clothing, moving with deadly purpose. The Crimson Court assassins had found them. Everything happened at once. Xavros' guards engaged the attackers in a blur of inhuman speed and violence. Seraphina pushed Meredith behind a bookshelf and drew a wicked-looking blade. Xavros himself moved like death incarnate, his hand closing around the throat of an assassin who'd gotten too close to Meredith. "Run!" he commanded, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Take the Chronicle and run!" But Meredith couldn't move. Frozen by fear and the surreal violence unfolding around her, these weren't movie seat scenes or choreographed stunts. This was real, brutal, terrifying combat between predators who could move faster than her eyes could follow. One of the assassins broke through the defensive line, heading straight for Meredith. She grabbed the Chronicle on instinct, clutching it to her chest as she scrambled backward. The assassin was pale and thin, with red eyes burning with madness, his fangs fully extended. He reached for her with hands that ended in claw-like nails, and then Xavros was there, moving between them with protective fury. His hand plunged into the assassin's chest, and Meredith heard the wet crack of ribs breaking. The assassin's scream cut off abruptly as Xavros ripped out his heart in one savage motion. The body crumpled to the floor, and Xavros turned to Meredith, covered in blood but eyes blazing with life. "I said run!" This time she listened. She bolted for the stairs, clutching the Chronicle, Seraphina at her heels. Behind them, the sounds of fighting continued, crashes, screams, the thud of bodies hitting floors. They made it to the 2nd floor when more assassins appeared, blocking their path. Seraphina engaged them without hesitation, her blade flashing in deadly arcs. Meredith pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of the way while keeping the Chronicle secure. A hand grabbed her from behind, and she screamed. But it was Xavros, appearing at her side like a vengeful ghost. "This way," he growled, pulling her down a side corridor. They ran through the stacks, the sounds of combat echoing through the usually peaceful library. Alarms were going off now, and Meredith could hear human voices shouting about calling the police. They burst out a service exit into the night air. The campus was still quiet, but that wouldn't last once the authorities arrived. Xavros lifted Meredith effortlessly. The Chronicle pressed between them and ran with inhuman speed. The world blurred around them. She closed her eyes and held on, trusting him completely. When he finally stopped, they were in an alley several blocks away, both breathing hard, or at least, she was. "Are you hurt?" His hands patted her down, checking for injuries with frantic care. "I'm fine. The book, I still have it." She held up the Chronicle, its ancient leather somehow intact despite everything. "Did everyone get out?" "Yes." "We lost one guard, but the rest escaped. Seraphina is leading them back to the tunnels." His jaw clenched. Constantine knew. Somehow he knew we would be there tonight, or he's been watching the library, knowing I'd eventually come back for what I hid. Meredith hugged the Chronicle to her chest. "Either way, we have it now. That's what matters." Xavros cupped her face in his blood-stained hands. "You could have been killed. When that assassin got close to you, he cut himself off," something like fear flashing across his ancient features. "I cannot lose you, Meredith Thorne. These past days, getting to know you, watching you face impossible circumstances with courage and wit, you have become essential to me in ways I did not think possible." "I feel the same way," she whispered, "which is insane, because a week ago I didn't know you existed, and now I can't imagine my life without you in it." He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, tasting of blood and violence and something purely him. She kissed back with equal fervor. The Chronicle pressed between them like a physical reminder of what they'd just survived together. When they broke apart, his eyes were blazing. "We need to get you back to the Manor. Once you are safe, I will decide what to do with the Chronicle." "Destroy it," Meredith said immediately. "That much power shouldn't exist. Even in good hands, it's too dangerous. Even if it could be used against Constantine, against others like him who threaten peace, especially then. Power like that corrupts. You know it does. The temptation to use it to control others, to remake the vampire world in your image, it would destroy even someone as principled as you eventually. She held his gaze steadily. Promise me you'll destroy it. Not lock it away or hide it, but actually destroy it so no one can ever use it. Xavros studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. I promise. But first we get you to safety. Constantine will be more desperate than ever now that we have what he wants. They made their way back through the city to the hidden entrance. Xavros kept one arm around Meredith the entire time, simultaneously protecting and claiming her. When they finally descended back into the vampire realm, she felt like she could breathe again. The next few days passed in tense preparation. Xavros assembled his full council to discuss the chronicle. Word spread through the vampire courts that the mythical book had been found, and suddenly the Nightborn realm was flooded with requests, demands, and threats from other vampire lords who wanted access to its power. Meredith stayed close to Xavros through all of it, watching him navigate complex politics with a skill honed over centuries. He deflected, manipulated, and outmaneuvered other vampires with ease, all while protecting her and keeping his promise about the chronicle's fate. She was present the night he finally destroyed it. In a chamber deep beneath the manor, with Ravenna chanting ancient words and his full guard standing witness, Xavros used a ritual older than recorded history to unmake the chronicle. The book burned with silver flames that consumed it completely, leaving not even ash behind. When it was done, he turned to Meredith with relief and something like sadness in his red eyes. It is finished. The chronicle is gone from this world. You did the right thing, she told him, taking his cold hand in her warm one. I hope history agrees with you. He squeezed her fingers gently. Many will see this as a waste, a missed opportunity. There will be consequences. We'll face them together. He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. Together. I find I like the sound of that. But the peace was short-lived. 2 nights later, a messenger arrived from Constantine himself, a formal challenge delivered in the old way, written in blood on parchment that smoked and hissed with dark magic. Xavros read it with an expression carved from stone, then handed it to Meredith. The words were flowery and archaic, but the meaning was clear. Constantine was demanding satisfaction for the destruction of the chronicle. He wanted Meredith handed over for judgment, claiming she had stolen vampire property. If Xavros refused, Constantine would consider it an act of war. This is insane, Meredith said, her hands shaking as she held the cursed parchment. I was protecting the chronicle for the council. I had every right to decide its fate. Constantine does not care about rights or justice. Xavros took the parchment back, and it burst into flames in his hand, burning away to nothing. He wants war. He has wanted it for centuries. This is simply the excuse he's been searching for. So what do? We prepare. His jaw set with determination. If Constantine wants war, I will give him one, but I will not sacrifice you to his sadism. Not for peace, not for politics, not for anything. The war, when it came, was nothing like human conflicts. It was fought in shadows and blood, in ancient tunnels and hidden courts. Vampire fought vampire in deadly skirmishes that left bodies drained and ancient powers broken. Xavros' allies rallied to his cause other vampire lords who were tired of Constantine's aggression, who believed in the old codes of honor that Constantine had abandoned. Meredith remained in the Nightborn Manor, protected by wards and guards, but she was far from idle. She worked with Ravenna to research ancient vampire laws, finding precedents and arguments to legitimize Xavros' position. She coordinated with human allies in the Council of Preservation, ensuring that vampire secrets remained secret even as war raged beneath the city. And every night, when Xavros returned from battle, she was there. She tended his wounds with hands that no longer trembled at the sight of blood. She listened to his strategies and offered insights from her human perspective. She held him when the weight of leadership and centuries of existence pressed too heavily on his shoulders. They grew closer through the conflict, their bond deepening in ways that transcended the physical. He told her stories of his long life, of the world before modern cities, of watching humanity grow and change over centuries. She shared what she'd recovered of her own life, her love of books and preservation, her quiet existence that had been shattered by vampire politics. Do you regret it? She asked one night, as they lay together in his chamber, her warm body pressed against his cold one. Getting involved with me, starting this war? Never. His answer was immediate and absolute. His fingers trailed through her hair with infinite gentleness. You have given me something I thought lost forever. Hope. Purpose beyond mere survival. The will to fight not just for my territory or my people, but for someone He paused, seeming to struggle with words. Someone I love. Meredith's breath caught. You love me? Yes. He turned to face her fully, his red eyes burning in the darkness. I, who thought myself beyond such mortal concerns, who have lived 800 years without feeling such depth of emotion, I love you, Meredith Thorne. I love your courage and your intelligence and your stubborn refusal to accept the limitations others place on you. I love the warmth you bring to my cold existence and the life you breathe into my ancient heart. And if that makes me foolish or weak, then so be it. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she reached up to touch his perfect face. I love you too. I know it's fast and impossible and completely insane, but I do. I love you, Xavros Blackthorne. He kissed her then with a passion unleashed, all the restraint he'd been exercising burning away. She responded with equal fervor, and for the first time since they'd met, she understood what forever could mean. Not the forever of his immortal existence, but the forever of two souls finding each other against impossible odds. The war reached its climax 6 weeks after it began. Constantine, growing desperate as more courts sided with Xavros, decided on a bold move. He challenged Xavros to single combat old vampire law that dated back millennia. The winner would take all, the loser would be destroyed, and the conflict would end without further bloodshed. Xavros accepted without hesitation, despite Meredith's protests. You can't, she argued, clutching his arm. He's older than you, more powerful. He's been looking for an excuse to destroy you for centuries. This is a trap, perhaps, but it is also the only way to end this war without thousands more deaths. He took her face in his hands. I am not weak, Meredith. I have survived this long through skill and power and cunning. I can defeat Constantine, and if you can't, his expression softened. Then you will be protected. I have made arrangements. You will be taken to a safe haven, given a new identity, protected by allies who owe me ancient debts. You will live a full human life, safe from vampire politics. I don't want a life without you in it! The words burst out raw and desperate. Don't you understand? I finally found you. Finally found someone who makes me feel alive and seen and valued. I'm not going to just accept losing you. You may not have a choice. He kissed her forehead. But I will fight with everything I have to return to you. That is my promise. The duel was held in neutral territory, an ancient cathedral long abandoned by humans, its gothic spires rising into the night sky. Representatives from every major vampire court attended as witnesses, filling the ruined pews in a sea of pale faces and red eyes. Meredith stood with Serafina in the front row, her heart in her throat as she watched Xavros and Constantine face each other in the nave. Constantine was terrifying to behold, taller than Xavros, with dead white skin and hair like spun ice. His eyes were nearly black with age and power, and when he smiled, his fangs were like daggers. He wore crimson robes that billowed around him like fresh blood. Finally, he said, his voice echoing through the cathedral, after all these centuries, I will have what should have been mine from the beginning. Your territories, your power, your throne, you will have dust and death, Xavros replied calmly. He wore simple black, his white hair pulled back, looking every inch the warrior king. You have violated our oldest laws, pursued personal vengeance over justice, and threatened the balance we have maintained for millennia. Tonight, that ends. They clashed with inhuman speed, becoming blurs of motion that Meredith's eyes could barely follow. The sound of their combat echoed through the cathedral crashes as they smashed through stone pillars, the wet sounds of fangs tearing flesh, the hiss of ancient magic being unleashed. Constantine was powerful, his age giving him strength that made the air itself tremble. But Xavros was skilled and strategic, using precision where Constantine used overwhelming force. They were evenly matched, and as minutes turned to an hour, both began to show signs of damage. Blood dark and sluggish, compared to human blood splattered across the cathedral floor. Xavros's coat was torn, revealing deep wounds that would have killed a human instantly, but merely slowed a vampire. Constantine's perfect face was marred by claw marks that smoked with silver fire. Then Constantine made a mistake. In his arrogance, he lunged for a killing blow that left him overextended. Xavros twisted aside with liquid grace, and his hand transformed into something clawed and terrible tore into Constantine's chest. The ancient vampire's eyes went wide with shock. Xavros's hand closed around Constantine's heart, and for a frozen moment, everything in the cathedral went silent. For 800 years you have been a plague on our kind, Xavros said, his voice carrying to every corner of the space. No more! He pulled, and Constantine's heart came free in a spray of dark blood. The ancient vampire's body went rigid, then began to crumble. In seconds, he was nothing but ash drifting to the cathedral floor. The watching vampires erupted into chaos, some cheering, others cursing, all acknowledging that a new order had been established. Meredith didn't care about any of it. She ran to Xavros, throwing her arms around him despite the blood and the danger and all the powerful vampires watching. He caught her instinctively, holding her close. "You're alive!" she sobbed into his chest. "You're alive! I promised I would return to you." His voice was rough with exhaustion, but his arms were strong around her. "I keep my promises." The aftermath of the duel brought sweeping changes to the vampire world. With Constantine destroyed, his territories were divided among various courts according to ancient law. Xavros' position was solidified. No one would challenge the king, who had defeated such a powerful ancient vampire in single combat. But the most significant change came in vampire-human relations. Xavros, citing Meredith's courage and assistance during the conflict, proposed new laws regarding human partnerships. Humans who proved themselves valuable allies would be granted protection and status within vampire society, given the choice to remain human or be turned if they desired immortality. It was revolutionary and controversial, but Xavros had the power and influence to make it happen. For Meredith, it meant choice. Real choice, for the first time since she'd woken in that strange manner. They discussed it one evening in the Manor's gardens, a vast underground space lit by thousands of lights that mimicked starlight. Flowers that only bloomed in darkness filled the air with sweet perfume. "I want you to understand what you would be giving up," Xavros said seriously. They sat on a bench carved from white stone, his arm around her shoulders. "If you remain human, we will have decades together, perhaps. A lifetime for you, a blink of an eye for me. And then I will watch you age and die, and I will be alone again." "And if I choose to turn?" Meredith asked. "Then we would have eternity. You would become vampire, powerful and immortal. We could rule together, face the centuries side by side." His hand tightened on her shoulder. "But you would give up sunlight, human food, the ability to have children. You would watch your human friends and family age and die. You would become something other, no matter how much of yourself you manage to keep. What do you want me to choose?" He was quiet for a long time. "Selfishly, I want you to turn. I want forever with you, want to never face losing you. But I also want you to have a full human life, to experience everything your mortality offers. I want you to have the choice I never had." Meredith leaned into him, breathing in his scent cold and clean like winter snow. "Can I tell you what I want?" "Please." "I want time. Not forever, not yet. I want to live as a human for a while longer, experience my mortal life with you beside me. I want to watch sunrises and eat ridiculous amounts of food and grow old enough to understand what I'm giving up." She pulled back to look at him. "But when I'm ready, maybe in 20 years, maybe in 40, I want you to turn me. I want forever with you, Xavros. Just not quite yet." His red eyes blazed with emotion. "You would choose that? Choose me, even knowing what it means. I already chose you the moment I trusted you with the Chronicle's location. Everything after has just been confirmation." She smiled. "Besides, someone needs to keep the King of the Nightborn humble." He laughed, a sound of pure joy that she'd never heard from him before. Then he was kissing her, pouring centuries of loneliness and hope and love into the contact. She kissed back with all the passion of her human heart, warm against his cold. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Then we will have decades together as you are, and then we will have forever." "I can accept those terms." "Good, because I wasn't really asking permission." She grinned at his expression. "You're going to have to get used to that, Your Majesty. I'm not the type to follow orders blindly. I noticed. It is one of the many things I love about you." He stood and offered his hand. "Come, let me show you the world as I see it, the beauty that exists in darkness." She took his hand without hesitation, lacing her warm fingers through his cold ones. Together they walked through the underground gardens, talking and laughing, making plans for a future that would span both mortal years and immortal centuries. The war was over. The Chronicle was destroyed. And Meredith Thorne, who had woken in a strange manner with no memory and no choice, had found love and purpose and a family in the last place she ever expected. She still returned to the surface regularly, maintaining her work with the Council of Preservation. But now she did it with full knowledge of the vampire world, acting as a liaison between human and vampire interests. She helped establish new protocols for protecting ancient texts, trained other archivists in vampire history, and became a bridge between two worlds. Xavros supported her completely, even installing a special chamber in the manor with full spectrum lights that mimicked sunlight, so she could experience something like day. He introduced her to vampire culture, the art and music and literature of immortal beings. She introduced him to modern human pleasures he'd overlooked: good coffee, streaming services, the joy of reading a book in a cozy blanket nest. They were an unlikely pair, the ancient vampire king and the young human archivist. But they fit together in ways neither had expected, complementing each other's strengths and supporting each other's weaknesses. Years passed in a happiness Meredith had never imagined possible. She celebrated birthdays and holidays, wrote papers on vampire history that only a select few could ever read, and fell more deeply in love with Xavros every day. He, in turn, rediscovered joy in small things through her eyes, the way she laughed at his stories of ancient history, the warmth of her body against his when they slept, the sheer aliveness she brought to his existence on her 30th birthday. As they celebrated in the Manor with friends from both worlds, Meredith looked around at the life she'd built. Serafina was teaching a group of humans about vampire culture. Ravenna was deep in conversation with a council historian about preservation techniques. Other vampires and humans mingled freely, the lines between species blurring in the face of genuine friendship and respect. Xavros found her on the balcony overlooking the underground city, a glass of wine in her hand as she watched the lights twinkle like stars. "Thinking deep thoughts?" he asked, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. "Just appreciating how far we've come. 6 years ago, I woke up in your home with no memories and no hope. Now," she gestured at the party inside, at the city beyond, at the life they'd created together. "Now I have everything I never knew I wanted. Do you ever regret it? The path that led you here?" She turned in his arms to face him, her warm hands framing his perfect face. "Never. Not one moment. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You saved mine as well." He kissed her softly. "You gave me reason to hope, to fight, to believe that even an old monster like me could find happiness. You're not a monster. You're the man I love," she then said carefully. "And I've been thinking about our agreement, about the future." His red eyes sharpened with focus. "Yes, I'm not ready yet, but soon, maybe in another 5 or 10 years. I want to live more of my mortal life first, accomplish more, experience more. But then," she smiled at him, "then I want you to turn me. I want forever with you, Xavros Blackthorne. I want to stand beside you not as your human lover, but as your equal partner. Your vampire queen." She felt him go still against her, centuries of control barely keeping his emotions in check. When he spoke, his voice was rough with feeling. "You honor me more than you can possibly know. And when you are ready, truly ready, I will give you the dark gift. We will face eternity together." "Together," she echoed, and kissed him as fireworks, magical ones, conjured by Ravenna, exploded over the underground city in celebration. Their story didn't end with that promise. They had years yet before the turning, decades of mortal life and immortal love to navigate. There would be challenges, still there always were when two worlds collided. But they had proven they could face anything together. The woman who had woken in a strange manner with no memory had found her identity, her purpose, and her soulmate in the vampire king who refused to let her leave. And the vampire king who had lived 800 years without feeling truly alive had found his reason for existing in one stubborn, courageous human woman. They had survived assassination attempts, political intrigue, and a war that shook the vampire world. They would survive whatever came next as well, because they had each other. In a world of darkness and danger, they had found their light, and when the time finally came for Meredith to trade her mortal life for immortal existence, when Xavros's fangs pierced her throat and filled her veins with transformative venom, she went willingly into the darkness, not as a prisoner or a victim, but as a partner choosing forever with the man she loved. She woke 3 days later in the same room where her human life had begun in Xavros's manor, but everything was different now. Her senses were sharper, her body stronger, her eyes burning with the red fire of vampire kind. And when Xavros took her hand and led her to the balcony to show her the underground city through immortal eyes, she saw it clearly for the first time, the true beauty of the vampire world she now belonged to. "Welcome home," he whispered against her ear, and she knew he meant more than just the manor or the city. He meant here, with him, forever. "Home," she agreed, turning to kiss her vampire king, her partner, her love. Finally, they stood together on that balcony, two immortals against the darkness, and faced eternity side by side. The human woman who had been lost had found herself in the most unexpected place. And the vampire king who had been alone had found his queen. Their story began with fear and confusion in a strange manner. It ended with love and choice and forever, which was exactly the ending they both deserved. Not because it was easy or simple or conventional, but because they had fought for it, chosen it, and built it together against impossible odds. In the centuries that followed, they would rule the Nightborn court together. making decisions that shaped the vampire world for generations. They would face new conflicts, new challenges, new adventures, but they would face them all together, two souls perfectly matched, bound by love stronger than death and time. The manor that had once been Meredith's prison became her palace. The vampire king who had refused to let her leave became her reason for staying, and the love that had bloomed in darkness became the light that guided them through eternity. This was their happily ever after, not perfect, not easy, but real and earned and completely, beautifully theirs. A human girl and a vampire king, against all odds and expectations, had found forever in each other's arms, and in the end, that was the only story that mattered.